Welcome to another lore video, and this one finds us, well, still in limbo as far as the war is concerned. If you've watched Bert or any of the big content providers, you'll know that Update 18 is coming this month. What we've done so far is coming to an end, as they've decided to move the story on and let us have a go at the Titans. Update 18 will be out on the 26th, so it's only a couple of weeks away now. Till then, nobody's busting a gut to clear the systems around the Titans, and we're just having some fun in the invasions. People are trying a few things they haven't before, taking the opportunity to get rescue ships and other ships fully engineered, trying out some of the on-foot activities like the AX reactivations, upgrading their Odyssey suits and guns, while others are using rescues for good money and materials and the experience while they build up cash for a carrier or whatever else they want cash for. And there's even been a bit of a resurgence in Titan rescues. People who haven't visited a Titan yet are going in and trying out a few pod rescues for the experience, but also to see a Titan for themselves and familiarise themselves with the Titans and their environment. Taking the chance to learn their way around in readiness for Update 18 when we all expect to be spending more time in there. I'm still disappointed to have a year's work just swept under the carpet, and I still think it's going to be a big ask for FDev to expect our trust and participation on that level again. But at least now there is no pressure to clear systems, so it's given people a chance to catch up with all those things they've been wanting to try, but they've been too busy with war work. So how are we going to attack the Titans then? It began with a community goal I mentioned last time to bring relics and grelics to Aegis. After that, this article gave us more information on whatever it is that Ramtar has come up with and confirms that it's a weapon. It was followed by a second community goal to bring Spire Site materials to Aegis. They wanted 60,000 and they got them by Saturday. The coral sap in particular was worth a lot of money, over 600,000 credits apiece, and many of the materials could simply be scooped from the ground after the recent improvements to collector limpets without having to land at all. Whether FDev knew this or just wanted it to be easy with a low target because it's all building up to whatever happens in Update 18, I don't know, but players smashed it by Saturday night, so it's done. The object of this community goal, we're told, was to help develop armour for the new weapon, so it won't be affected by the anti-Guardian radiation in the Titan system. The only other place where Guardian technology is disabled is HIP 22460, and I'm sure a few people are going to try it there, whether as an anti-Titan weapon it's any use there or not, just to see if that protection works there too. So thanks to the two community goals, work on the weapon and shielding it is now underway, and this article is the latest on that, confirming that the Spire Site materials will be used to create armour for the weapon. The big question here is, will it shield other Guardian items as well? Are we talking about a shielded weapon, or shielding that protects that weapon and any other Guardian stuff in your ship? From context, it sounds like it's just an armoured layer to protect the weapon itself, but if that could also be produced as shielding or a module for any ship, could it be used to negate the anti-Guardian field of the glaive and the shutdown field of the Orthrus? That would be very useful for all sorts of activities, from combat to rescues, salvage and deliveries. Logically, with the Titans gone, their influence over the systems that were around them would be weakened and leave us with a bit of a clean-up exercise to do, assuming the Thargoids there don't just retreat as well. Other ideas players are throwing around include pursuing the Thargoids to wherever they came from. The Cone Sector and Col 70 are being mentioned again as an old lore reference to what players believed was the Thargoids' home space, possibly containing their home world, and which the cannon ship tried to jump into all those years ago, only to be attacked by Thargoids before the jump could go ahead. I don't buy this one personally because I don't think the Thargoids have come from any single place, at least not these ones. The Thargoids came at us from 8 different directions for months before arriving. Only one came from anywhere near the Cone Sector, so this idea of one area being where some Thargoid homeworld is, it could be true. Maybe it's a world they expanded out from as we did from Earth. but it seems academic when they can send Titans from other parts of the galaxy, or perhaps even from other galaxies. Maybe where the Titans were first spotted was where they landed when they jumped in from another galaxy. We just don't know. Still, chasing these particular Thargoids back to where they came from, wherever that is, and perhaps learning something about them in the process is very much something that would be fun to do. Another idea is the old, maybe this is all a huge misunderstanding. Let's suppose the Thargoids are not abducting us for some sinister or malicious purpose, but trying to save us, because there's a bigger threat than both of us on its way. Now the Scythes, who do most of this abduction, are hanging around damage stations like vultures, and damage stations are where you get the critically wounded, and yet all of the people that have been rescued from Thargoid pods are in perfect physical health, so this suggests that they're healing them. Unless we're supposed to believe that out of all the millions that they've abducted, there wasn't one with an injury, not one with a burn, not one with any kind of illness at all. So they're not just abducting them, they're healing them. They're at least restoring them to full physical health, whatever else they might be doing to them. That could still be sinister, of course, because if you're going to reprogram them as Thargoid zombies or something, you'd want them to be in as good physical shape as possible. But it could also just be that we've got this all wrong. So maybe we could end up joining forces with the Thargoids against, what? The return of the Guardians? The Guardian AIs turning up? They'd have to be pretty bad for the Thargoids to consider them a bigger threat than us. But it's not so out there as an idea. The Guardians are the only species to defeat the Thargoids before we came along. They drove them off over 1 million years before we existed, using technology that rapidly developed to detect and target Thargoid engineering. The Guardians Codex tells us this, and I'll be referring to that, so I'll link to Canon's excellent page with all the Codex entries below. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Listen to the recordings, read them for yourself. Everything we know about the war between the Guardians and the Thargoids has come from the Guardians Codex, so familiarising yourself with it is a good idea. This is the relevant entry. Entry 4 of 28, Thargoid Log, the War Machine. The data in this log details the methods used by the Guardians against the Thargoids. At first they deployed ground troops, but when this proved ineffective, they started to use drones. Autonomous machines that felt no fear, fatigue or uncertainty. These war machines became highly sophisticated in a relatively short amount of time, and were soon able to identify and target anything that utilised Thargoid engineering. Even more remarkably, Thargoid biomechanical technology was engineered to recognise anything of Guardian origin. That explains why, millions of years after the conflict, Thargoid devices still react aggressively to the presence of Guardian technology. Now, if the Guardians can develop technology as quickly as the Codex suggests, then no matter how adaptable the Thargoids are, or not, there may be limits to what they can counter. If the Guardian AIs are still alive, they've had 1 million years to evolve their technology, and what we've found so far at their sites and ruins could be the tip of the iceberg. Salvation, the Super Muppet's attempt to upload his ego into a Guardian box, confirms that there are still things we don't know about Guardian technology, and it hints that there might be new things to discover. Or even new things to discover about what we've found already. Because if it comes to that, we don't fully understand the Guardian stuff we've already discovered. From the Guardian Codex we know that relics are part power source, part computer and part key, and were apparently programmed for specific tasks. We know all that about them, but not one thing about how to program them ourselves. The only ones who might are Salvation and the Thargoids. To our knowledge, Ramtar was the first to translate the Guardian Codex entries, so the Proteus crew, who were part of Azimuth 200 years ago, wouldn't know that the relic they found in the trapezium sector was part power source, part computer and part key. My guess, for what it's worth, is that in the absence of knowing what else to do, the Proteus crew simply tried bombarding the relic with different kinds of radiation until one of them triggered an uncontrolled burst of power in response, which fried them. And by the time Salvation came to use relics and other Guardian artifacts, he had their research to refer to, thanks to us, and by then he'd learned how to unlock that power without just crudely blasting it until it was released. In essence, he learned how to turn it on properly instead of just hitting it until it blew up. That, coupled with the Thargoid ability to convert relics into Grelics, suggests to me that perhaps both he and the Thargoids now know how to program relics, if not fully, then at least a little bit. And that's still more than anyone else does. So far they've only unlocked a fraction of their power to use in very simple ways. And now it looks like Ram-Tah may have gained some ability in this area as well. If we look at this section of the article that was released after the relics were handed in, it remains true that our existing armaments are incapable of inflicting damage on Thargoid motherships, but if Ram-Tah is correct, we may be able to reveal certain vulnerabilities by exploiting a newly discovered aspect of Guardian technology. The ones who would know how to program them fully, of course, would be the Guardians or their AIs. So in that sense, there's every reason to think that the Thargoids are right to be wary of technology with the capability to develop faster than their own, and which targets them in the process. It may also be the reason why even now, when we encounter new Thargoids like the Titans, that it's still Guardian technology that has the best chance against them, because we've done little more than scratch the surface of what it can do. In any case, and all speculation aside, for us and the Thargoids to join forces against any larger threat, we would have to be able to find a way to make peace, or at least call a truce. Which brings me to another massive part of the lore. I don't think we've seen or know enough to understand what a Thargoid's idea of peace would be, let alone what they would agree to in order to secure it. But our biggest issue isn't whether they understand or care about the concept of peace as we know it. Our biggest issue is we don't know their language, so we can't communicate with them, and I believe this to be absolutely deliberate. Now, some of you have heard me talk about this before, but if any of these ideas that players are having now ever come to fruition, then the need to communicate in some way becomes more and more urgent. So let's recap what we know. We know from the codex entries Ram-Tah sends you to get that the Guardians figured out the Thargoid language and tried to talk to the Thargoids to end their war, but the Thargoids ignored them and kept blasting. Here's the entry itself. Entry 3 of 28, Thargoid log, unsuccessful truce. This data supports my theory that the Guardians were gifted linguists. At some point after the war with the Thargoids began, the Guardians were forced to make a partial retreat. It seems they were still trying to communicate with the Thargoids and were reluctant to take up arms against them. Eventually they managed to develop sufficient understanding of the Thargoids' language to communicate, but it did the Guardians little good. The Thargoids were determined to continue hostilities, and the Guardians were forced to employ more aggressive methods to address the Thargoid threat. This has been taken as an article of faith by everyone. It's in the Commander Codex, and it's been mentioned in Galnet. And yet, in over 100 Codex entries that you find on Ram-Tah's quest, decoding the ancient ruins, and the 28 further Guardian Codex entries on his other quest, decrypting the Guardian logs, there is not one letter, not one cipher, not one single example of this language they translated. This massive story beat that everybody has taken on faith has no examples of it anywhere in the game. Don't get me wrong here, that doesn't mean I don't think the Guardians deciphered the Thargoid language. I'm happy to go with the idea that they did, and I've got no reason to suppose we've been lied to about that. But I also think the lack of a single example in all those codex entries is a very deliberate omission. We have been stopped from communicating with them in any meaningful way on purpose because we're not meant to yet. Beyond that, humans are the biggest obstacle to peace in my view. We shot them first and we invaded their barnacle patches, building a whole industry and in the case of the Alliance, a large part of their economy, which relies on meta-alloys stolen from the barnacle sites. Until then, the Thargoids were fiercely territorial where they had barnacles, but outside those systems they made no attempt to expand into human space or bother us at all. But human nature being what it is, just because someone has shown no interest in you and just wants to be left alone to farm their barnacles doesn't mean they couldn't turn their plowshares into swords at some point, and paranoia did the rest. So we tried to wipe them out. Twice. Us and the Thargoids against a common enemy is plausible maybe, if they throw us at least a bone to communicate with them. Or possibly, if they don't do that, then maybe we'll be able to deduce what to do. For example, let's say the Guardians come back and attack, and the Thargoids ignore us and attack them. Perhaps they even pull out of all the systems they now occupy, whether to deploy those resources against a new enemy as a gesture of good faith to us, or both. We could infer from that behaviour what was going on, without having to literally be able to talk, but still, I really think it's about time the aliens we've met so far in the game should be demystified a little now. And whatever happens in this war, the result should be a bit more knowledge about them. Perhaps it may even teach humans that declaring war on everything they don't understand really isn't the way to go. But I can't help feeling that as soon as we fought off the Guardians together, even if we managed to communicate and perhaps trade or exchange technologies, how long would it be before someone said, "Hey, why are we trading with these guys when we can just kill them and take what we want?" I'd like not to be cynical, but humans won't let me. Stay safe, and as always, thanks for watching.